My name is Morgan Upton. I am 31 years old. Last Friday, at our rehearsal dinner, my mother-in-law stood up with a champagne glass and told 65 guests that her son could have married someone from a real family. She pointed straight at me when she said it. Every person in that room turned to look. My fiancé squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back. Then I pulled out my phone. And I showed everyone the video she did not know I had. But here is what Patricia Aldridge did not realize. Her own voice, her own face, was about to play on the 60-inch screen behind her. And every single person in that room was going to hear exactly what she had been planning for the past 8 months. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where we share real stories of family drama, quiet strength, and the boundaries that changed everything. If you are new here, drop a comment and hit subscribe. Your support means the world. Now, let me tell you how a champagne toast turned into the night Patricia Aldridge lost everything she thought she controlled. I grew up in the foster system. My mother died in a car accident when I was 7. I never knew my father. 3 different homes before I turned 14. Each one a different kitchen, a different set of rules, a different explanation for why I could not stay. Then I met June Reeves. June was 64 when I moved in, though she looked 50. Retired elementary school teacher. House smelled like cinnamon rolls and laundry soap. She met me at her front door with a glass of lemonade and the only sentence I needed to hear. "You can stay as long as you need, Morgan." I stayed. I graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA. I worked night shifts at the county hospital to pay for nursing school. Scholarships covered tuition. My hands covered everything else. I became a pediatric nurse practitioner, passed my boards on the first try. 2 years ago, I opened my own pediatric clinic in Leesburg, Virginia. 12 exam rooms, 4 staff members, and a waiting room painted the exact shade of yellow that June's kitchen was. I never had a family name that opened doors. I had a stethoscope and 12-hour shifts. I had a woman who kept the porch light on until I got home, no matter how late. I had calluses on my palms from mopping hospital floors at 2 in the morning and notes taped to my bathroom mirror that said, "Keep going." But Patricia Aldridge? She had a last name that opened every door in Northern Virginia. And she made sure I knew mine did not. I met Ethan 14 months before the rehearsal dinner. His younger sister, Caroline, brought her 4-year-old son, Noah, into my clinic on a Tuesday night. The boy could not breathe. His lips were turning blue. Asthma attack. Severe, sudden, terrifying for a young mother alone in a waiting room at 9:30 at night. I was the only practitioner on call. I stabilized Noah, got him on a nebulizer, sat with Caroline while his oxygen levels climbed back to normal. She cried into a paper towel. I held her other hand. 3 days later, Caroline called the clinic. "My brother wants to take you to dinner, to say thank you. He is awkward and talks too much about ocean currents, but he is the best person I know." Ethan Aldridge was 33, marine biologist, tall, kind face. He had walked away from the family real estate business to study coral bleaching in the Chesapeake Bay. He asked me about my clinic. I asked about his research. We forgot about dinner entirely. 14 months of dating, 8 months engaged. He was the first person who asked about my foster care background without flinching. The first one who did not treat it like a wound. He treated it like a foundation. We had dinner at a Vietnamese place in Leesburg. Pho and spring rolls and a table by the window. He told me about his dissertation on thermal stress in coral colonies. I told him about the girl who came into my clinic with a marble stuck in her ear and swore a unicorn put it there. He laughed so hard he spilled his water. After that, we saw each other every week, then every few days, then every day. He was not impressed by me because I had overcome something. He was impressed by the clinic, by the way I handled a screaming toddler at 3 in the morning, by the fact that I could recite pediatric dosing charts from memory, but could not parallel park to save my life. He did not treat my foster care background like a wound. He treated it like a foundation. The first time I met his mother, she looked at my shoes before she looked at my face. Navy flats, scuffed at the toe. I had come straight from a 12-hour shift. Patricia Aldridge looked down, then up, and I watched her opinion form in real time. It was the same look I had seen in every foster home intake office, the look that measured you before you even spoke. The first dinner at the Aldridge house was a Tuesday in October. Their home sat on 3 acres in Great Falls, $2.8 million of colonial brick and manicured boxwoods. The driveway alone was longer than the entire block where June Reeves lived. Patricia met us at the door in a navy blazer, a pearl brooch pinned above her left pocket. Antique. The kind that gets passed down. Not purchased. She wore it like armor. "Morgan. How lovely." She kissed air beside my cheek. "Come in. Ethan tells me you are a nurse." "Nurse practitioner. Pediatric." "Of course." She smiled the way people smile when they have already decided the conversation is beneath them. The dining room had 12 chairs, oil paintings, silver flatware that weighed more than my stethoscope. Patricia served roasted lamb and asked gentle questions that were not gentle at all. "And your parents? What do they do?" I explained foster care the way I always did. Matter of fact, no pity-seeking. "Oh." Patricia set down her fork. "How brave of you." Garrett sat at the end of the table, 62, gray at the temples. He nodded once and went back to his phone. He did not speak for the rest of dinner. Afterward, Patricia walked me through the hallway, framed photographs on every wall. "4 generations of Aldridges," she said, trailing a finger along the frames. "This land has been ours since 1952. The implication did not need translation. I had no generations, no land, no legacy wall. At the front door, she took my hand, leaned close. Her pearl brooch caught the porch light. "You were never going to be one of us, Morgan. I hope you understand that." I smiled. I thanked her for dinner. I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Ethan proposed at the lighthouse. It was the same spot where we had our first real date. Cape Henry, Virginia Beach. November wind. Salt air. He got down on one knee with a ring that was simple and perfect, and nothing like the 3-carat diamond his mother wore. I said yes before he finished the question. I called June first. She cried for 4 minutes straight. My girl is getting married." I could hear her blowing her nose into a dish towel. I loved that sound. I called Patricia second. 4 seconds of silence. "Well, congratulations, I suppose." The line went flat, not cold, flat, like someone reading a teleprompter for a commercial they did not believe in. The next morning, Patricia sent an email. Not a text. An email. Subject line: wedding coordination. "I will handle the wedding planning. You focus on your clinic." She had already booked a venue, the Aldridge Family Country Club. $38,000 for the reception alone. She had selected the florist, the photographer, the string quartet. She had chosen a guest list of 200 people, 170 of whom I had never met. I wanted 40 guests. A garden. My foster siblings in the front row. Patricia wanted a production, and she had already started building the set. I did not fight her on it. Not then. I told myself it was easier to pick my battles, that this was what compromise looked like, that she would come around eventually. I did not know then, but Patricia had already been planning a different wedding entirely, with a different bride. The next 2 months were a masterclass in control disguised as generosity. Patricia picked the menu without consulting me. She selected the cake flavor, vanilla bourbon, her favorite, without asking if I had a preference. She arranged the seating chart with her friends and business contacts filling every table like it was a corporate gala. When I suggested inviting June Reeves and 4 friends from my foster days, Patricia smiled warmly. "Of course, though space is getting limited, so keep the list tight." 200 guests. But space was limited for my 5. Then came the save the dates. June called me on a Thursday afternoon. "Honey, is the wedding really on the 14th? That is a week earlier than you told me." I pulled up the digital proof Patricia had sent to the printer. My side of the guest list, June, my foster siblings, 2 nursing school friends, all had the wrong date, 1 week early. Every other invitation was correct. Patricia's explanation was smooth. "The printer must have run 2 batches with different dates. These things happen with large orders. They do not happen. Not like that. Not when the error hits only one group of people. I fixed the dates. Reprinted. Paid the extra $240 from my own account. I did not confront Patricia. I did not call Ethan. But I started keeping a folder. A digital folder on my phone. Screenshots of the wrong dates. The printer's confirmation that only one batch was ordered. Patricia's email approving the guest list with correct dates. Everywhere except my side. I did not know yet what the folder was for. But something in me, something from years of learning to read a room before speaking, told me to keep it. The bridal shower was held at Vivian Holt's estate in McLean. I did not plan it. Patricia did. She told me the date and the dress code. White cocktail attire. Noon. Champagne on arrival. Vivian's house made the Aldridge home look modest. 6 bedrooms. A pool shaped like a kidney bean. Marble floors so polished I could see my reflection in them before I reached the front door. 80% of the guests were Patricia's friends. Women in silk blouses and statement earrings who kissed my cheeks and called me the bride without using my name. I recognized 5 faces in the entire room. Vivian Holt was 57. Platinum hair swept into a chignon. Wide smile. She hugged me like we were old friends. So you are the one who stole Ethan from us. She laughed when she said it. I laughed too. But her eyes did not match the sound. Her daughter Sloane was 29. Wharton MBA. She worked at Holt Development, the family's commercial real estate firm. She was beautiful in the effortless way that expensive things are beautiful. She sat beside Patricia for the entire shower, refilling her champagne, laughing at her jokes. Near the end, I went to the powder room. The hallway was quiet, but not quiet enough. Vivian's voice carried through the cracked kitchen door. She would have been perfect for him, Pat, but it is not too late. I froze. Patricia's reply was soft, almost inaudible, but I heard the laugh, and I heard the silence that meant agreement. It is not too late. That was the first time I heard the word perfect used like a weapon aimed at the space where I was supposed to stand. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from the caterer. Her name was Dana. She had been in the business 22 years. She was professional, direct, and clearly uncomfortable. Morgan, I need to verify a menu change. Your mother-in-law called yesterday and asked us to reduce the dinner service by 40%. She said the bride's side had fewer guests and, I quote, "We do not need to feed street kids a 5-course meal." I sat in my clinic parking lot with the engine running. Street kids. The words sat in my chest like something swallowed wrong. Dana, please restore the original menu. Full service. I will cover the difference. $3,200. I transferred it that afternoon. Patricia had called the caterer directly, used my name as authorization, and cut the food for every table where my guests would be sitting. She had not told me. She had not told Ethan. She had simply done it the way she did everything, quietly, precisely, and with total confidence that no one would check. I added Dana's voicemail to the folder, the one where she repeated Patricia's exact words. Street kids. 2 words that told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in this family. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I listed every incident in my head. Wrong save the date. Controlled guest list. Stolen menu. You were never going to be one of us. Vivian's whisper. It is not too late. I was not imagining this. I called June the next morning. She listened to everything. Then she said one sentence that cut through every doubt. Baby, you are not imagining anything. That woman is trying to erase you. June was right. Patricia was not being difficult. She was running a campaign. Every incident had the same fingerprint. Surgical, deniable, targeted at isolating me from my own wedding. Not random hostility. Strategy. The kind that came from someone used to managing outcomes the way she managed property deals. She never raised her voice. She never threatened. She operated through systems. Caterers, printers, seating charts, guest lists, tools, infrastructure, the machinery of social control. I sat on the edge of my bed that Saturday morning. Ethan was out on a research boat, collecting water samples from the bay. The house was quiet. Sunlight cut through the blinds in thin horizontal lines across the floor. I picked up the folder on my phone. 6 entries, screenshots, a voicemail, timestamps, each one small enough to dismiss on its own. Together, they formed a pattern that did not need interpretation. Patricia's pearl brooch flashed in my memory. She wore it at every encounter. At the dinner. At the bridal shower. At the caterer tasting she had organized without inviting me. It sat above her heart like a service medal, a reminder of rank. I needed to know what I was dealing with. Not suspicion, not intuition. I needed facts. The next morning, I told Ethan I needed his old iPad to check the wedding planning spreadsheet. He was halfway out the door, gear bag over one shoulder. Sure, it is on the kitchen counter. Password is the year we started dating. He kissed my forehead and left. I opened the iPad, tapped the spreadsheet app, pulled up the budget file. Then a notification dropped from the top of the screen. iMessage, group chat. Aldridge family. The preview showed my name. 7 words I was never meant to see. Morgan does not need to know about the Holt arrangement. I put the spreadsheet down. I stared at the notification for 10 seconds. Then I tapped it open. The group chat had 4 members: Patricia, Garrett, Vivian Holt, Sloane Holt. It had been active for 11 months, 3 months longer than my engagement. The first message was dated 8 months before Ethan proposed, back when we had only been dating for 6 months. I scrolled to the top. The iPad screen had a hairline crack running down the left side, brown leather case, scuffed at the corners. Ethan's old tablet, the one he used for research papers and tide charts. He had not opened this chat in months. The messages had been arriving in silence, stacking up like bricks in a wall built around me. 4 members, 11 months, and my name appeared 63 times. I know because I counted later. The first message was from Patricia, sent on a Tuesday at 9:14 in the morning. Short, casual. The way someone starts a conversation they have thought about for a long time but want to make look spontaneous. Ethan is seeing that nurse. It will not last. Vivian replied within the hour. Sloane has been asking about him. Should I set up dinner? Patricia. Give it 6 months. He will come around. That was 11 months ago. Ethan had not come around. He had proposed instead. I scrolled forward. The tone shifted the day Ethan told his parents about the engagement, 8 months ago. The messages came faster. Patricia. This is a disaster. We need to accelerate. Garrett. Let it play out, Pat. Maybe the wedding will not happen. Patricia. I am not leaving this to chance. My fingers were cold on the cracked screen. I kept scrolling. The messages got worse. Much worse. 5 months before the wedding, Patricia laid out the plan. I read it sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with the iPad balanced on my knees. Morning light through the window. Coffee going cold on the side table. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Patricia to Vivian. The Holts and the Aldridges. 2 families, 1 development. It was always supposed to be Sloane. Vivian. Sloane is ready. Just get that foster girl out of the picture. Foster girl. Not Morgan. Not even her. Foster girl. Patricia. I have a plan. The rehearsal dinner. A toast that ends everything. She described it in the group chat the way someone describes a business proposal. Calm. Methodical. Step 1. Give a speech at the rehearsal dinner that publicly humiliates Morgan. Step 2. Morgan breaks down and calls off the wedding. Step 3. Ethan, embarrassed and freed, reconnects with Sloane. Step 4. The $4.2 million land deal between Aldridge Real Estate and Holt Development moves forward with a family merger to seal it. 4 steps. My entire future reduced to a 4-step project plan. Garrett's response was 3 words. Pat, be careful. Not, do not do this. Not, that is wrong. 3 words that acknowledged the plan and asked only that it be executed cleanly, an enabler's blessing in shorthand. I put the iPad down, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the cold tile floor. 10 minutes. I did not cry. My hands shook. My jaw was tight. but I did not cry. Years of foster homes teach you how to hold yourself together when the ground shifts beneath you. Then I stood up, washed my face, picked up the iPad, and took 47 screenshots. I sent every screenshot to my personal email. Then I deleted the notification badge, cleared the read receipt, and set the iPad back on the kitchen counter exactly where Ethan had left it. The screenshots sat in my inbox like a loaded weapon I had not asked for. I scrolled through them again on my phone. 47 images, 11 months of messages, my name mentioned 63 times. And not once, not a single time, did anyone in that chat refer to me as Morgan. Foster girl. That nurse. The clinic girl. Her. Vivian had the most creative vocabulary. Ethan's charity case. The stray Patricia cannot shake. One message, sent at 11:41 at night after what I assumed was a glass of wine, read simply, "When does the orphan phase end?" Patricia never corrected her. Never pushed back. Never typed, "Her name is Morgan." She either laughed or changed the subject to logistics. The $4.2 million land deal appeared in 9 separate messages. Holt Development owned a 70-acre parcel on the Route 7 corridor. Aldridge Real Estate had the permits and the county contacts. A merged family made the deal seamless. Shared legal counsel, shared liability, shared last name. Sloan was the bridge. Ethan was the reluctant crossing. And I was the obstacle standing in the middle of it. I closed my phone, poured the cold coffee down the sink, stood at the kitchen window and looked at the backyard where Ethan had hung a bird feeder last spring, a crooked wooden box he built himself because he said store-bought ones scared the finches. That man built bird feeders. His mother built traps. I picked up my phone and called Caroline. "Can we talk?" "Somewhere private." I did not tell Ethan. Not yet. That decision was deliberate. Ethan loved his mother the way sons love mothers who are difficult but familiar. He had spent 33 years translating her cruelty into eccentricity, her control into concern. If I showed him the screenshots without a plan, his first instinct would be to call Patricia, confront her, demand answers, and Patricia would deny everything, delete the chat, play the wounded mother, cry on cue. She would rewrite the story before anyone else had a chance to read it. I needed more than screenshots. I needed something she could not talk her way out of. So I waited. 2 days. I went to work. I saw 17 patients. Ear infections, a broken wrist, one terrified 5-year-old who needed her first stitches. I held the girl's hand and counted to 3 while the local anesthetic worked. Her mother thanked me in the parking lot with tears in her eyes. That is what I do. I hold steady when things hurt. I learned it young, and I never stopped. On the second day, Caroline texted, "Can you meet me at Grounds and Greens, the coffee place near Purcellville? I need to show you something." Purcellville was 32 miles from the Aldridge house, far enough that Patricia would not see us. I drove with the windows down and the radio off. Caroline was already there. Corner booth. Red eyes. A glass of water she had not touched. She looked up when I sat down. "Morgan, I know about the group chat. I have known for months." I was too scared to say anything. She paused, swallowed. "But I found something else. Something worse." She slid the family iPad across the table. Caroline opened the iPad's photo library, tapped a folder labeled FaceTime Recordings. Inside was a single video, 8 minutes and 43 seconds long, recorded 12 days ago. "Mom does not know this exists," Caroline said. "The iPad autosaves FaceTime calls when the recording setting is on. Dad turned it on months ago for some legal deposition prep. Nobody remembered to turn it off." She pressed play. The screen showed Patricia in the Aldridge living room. Evening light. Crystal tumbler on the coffee table. She was on a FaceTime call with Vivian Holt. Both women were laughing. Patricia held an imaginary champagne glass, practicing. My son could have married a doctor, a lawyer, someone from a real family. Instead, he chose her. She pointed at the camera, smiled wide. Vivian. And then what? Then I point at her, in front of everyone. Can you imagine the look on her face? Vivian laughed. She will cry, right there at the table. Patricia leaned back, took a sip from the tumbler. She will run. She is a foster kid, Viv. They always run when it gets hard. By Monday, Sloane's engagement photos are on the mantle. And the Holt deal closes by March. I watched the whole thing. 8 minutes. Patricia rehearsing her speech like an actress blocking a scene. Vivian coaching her delivery. At minute 6, Patricia said, "We do not let street kids sit at the Aldridge table, Vivian. It is time everyone knew that." Caroline reached across the table and put her hand on mine. "She is my mother. But you are my family now. I could not let her do this." The coffee shop was busy. Someone's espresso machine hissed. A child laughed somewhere near the counter. Normal sounds. Ordinary morning. I looked at Caroline. "Can you airdrop this to my phone?" She did. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed and waited for Ethan to come home. He walked in smelling like salt water and sunscreen. Research boat day. "Good data," he said. The coral samples were promising. He was talking about pH levels when he saw my face. "What happened?" I opened my phone, placed it on the bed between us, pulled up the screenshots first. 47 images. I let him scroll. His face changed at message 4. By message 12, the color had left his skin entirely. By message 30, his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the tendons in his neck. 11 months. His voice was raw. "She has been doing this for 11 months? Since before you proposed." He stood up, walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the glass. "I will cancel everything. I will call her right now and—" "No." He turned. "If you call her now, she controls the story." I kept my voice level, clinical. The same voice I used when explaining a diagnosis to a frightened parent. "She will delete the chat. She will cry. She will tell your father you broke her heart. She will tell her friends I poisoned you against her. And 65 people at that rehearsal dinner will hear only her version." "Then what do we do?" I picked up the phone, opened the video. "We let her give the speech, in front of everyone, and then we show them this." Ethan watched the video, his mother's face, his mother's voice, the imaginary champagne glass, the laughter, the plan. He sat back down, took my hand. Together. Together. The rehearsal dinner was in 48 hours. I went to work the next day like nothing had changed. 7:30 in the morning. Clinic opens. First patient at 7:45, a 2-year-old with a fever of 103. I checked her ears, pressed my stethoscope to her tiny chest, smiled at her mother, and wrote a prescription for amoxicillin. Steady hands, clear eyes. That is how you survive in foster care. That is how you survive in medicine. You compartmentalize. You do the next right thing. You hold the crisis in a separate room in your mind and lock the door until you are ready to open it. Ethan called the restaurant during his lunch break. The rehearsal dinner was booked in the private dining room at Aldridge Country Club. He asked one question. "Is there a TV connected to AirPlay in the dining room?" There was. 60-inch flat screen mounted on the wall behind the head table, normally used for slideshows during anniversary parties. Perfect. We might want to show a short video during the toasts. The restaurant manager said that would be no problem at all. That evening, I called June. "June, I need you at the rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. Something is going to happen, and I need you there." June did not ask what. She did not ask why. She said, "I will be there, baby. Front row." At 10 that night, I stood in the bathroom, tested the AirPlay connection on my phone. Green light. Connected. The signal was strong. I checked my patient's charts one last time. I checked my email. I checked the AirPlay connection once more. Then I brushed my teeth and went to sleep. The last thing I thought before closing my eyes was Patricia rehearsing her toast with an imaginary champagne glass. Tomorrow, the glass would be real. Friday morning. The day of the rehearsal dinner. I stood in front of the bedroom mirror in a navy dress. Simple. Fitted. No jewelry except a thin silver chain June had given me when I graduated nursing school. The clasp was loose and I had to fiddle with it every time, but I would not wear anything else. I looked at myself for a long time. I thought about the first foster home. 7 years old. standing in front of a bathroom mirror in a house that was not mine, wearing clothes that did not fit, trying to convince a girl in the reflection that she belonged there. I thought about June, her kitchen, cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings, the porch light always on. I thought about Patricia's pearl brooch, the way she wore it like a badge of rank, the way she stood in that hallway and pointed to 4 generations of photographs and said, "This land has been ours since 1952. Today, I was going to stand in a room she built, surrounded by people she chose, and let her say whatever she wanted to say. And then I was going to show 65 of those people exactly who Patricia Aldridge was, with her own voice, her own words, her own face." Ethan came up behind me, put his arms around my waist. "You ready?" I looked at him in the mirror. The man who studied coral because he believed damaged things could heal. The man who built a bird feeder because store-bought ones scared the finches. "I have been ready since I was 7, Caroline called at noon. Her voice was tight. "Mom is already at the venue. She looks excited, Morgan, like she cannot wait." "Good. Let her have her moment." I picked up my phone, checked AirPlay one last time. Then I drove to the dinner that was going to change everything. If you have ever sat at a table where someone tried to make you feel like you did not belong, I see you. Drop a comment below and share your story. And if this one has you holding your breath, hit subscribe so you do not miss what happens when Patricia stood up with that champagne glass. We arrived at 7:15. The restaurant was already full. The private dining room at Aldridge Country Club was exactly what Patricia wanted it to be. Long mahogany table, white tablecloths, candles in silver holders running down the center like a glowing spine, white lilies in crystal vases, 65 chairs arranged with the precision of a seating chart that had been revised 7 times. I knew because I had seen the drafts. Patricia had chosen this room. She had chosen the lighting, the flowers, the arrangement of every name card. She had placed herself at the head of the table, directly in front of the 60-inch flat screen mounted on the wall behind her. She did not know the TV was going to matter. I scanned the room as we entered. Ethan's hand was on the small of my back. Patricia's friends filled the center tables, women in structured blazers and statement necklaces, their husbands in sport coats and loosened ties. Business contacts of Garrett's lined the far wall. Aldridge extended family near the windows. Vivian Holt sat at the table closest to Patricia. She wore emerald green. Sloane sat beside her, quiet, polished, hands folded. And in the corner, at the last table by the service door, June Reeves, 64 years old, silver necklace, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She caught my eye when I walked in and gave me the smallest nod. I nodded back. Caroline was already seated. She looked pale. I touched her shoulder as I passed. She grabbed my wrist, quick, tight, then let go. Ethan pulled out my chair. I sat, placed my clutch on my lap. Inside the clutch, my phone, already connected to the room's AirPlay. 65 people. Candlelight, white tablecloths, and one woman who thought she controlled every person in that room. Dinner began at 7:30. The first course was a butternut squash bisque. Smooth, expensive. The kind of soup that arrives in a shallow bowl with a single swirl of cream on top. Patricia had tasted and approved it herself. Small talk filled the room. Ethan's Uncle Richard told a story about the time young Ethan brought a live crab to Thanksgiving dinner. Laughter rippled across the tables. Patricia smiled her public smile, wide, warm, perfectly timed. I watched Vivian across the room. She ate slowly. Between bites, she glanced at Patricia. A small nod, a quick look. Communication that required no words. Garrett sat at the opposite end from Patricia. He cut his steak into precise squares and did not look up. He knew what was coming. He had been in the group chat. He had read the plan. And he was going to sit there with his silverware and his silence and let it happen. The same way he had let everything happen for 30 years. Garrett Aldridge did not make decisions. He allowed them. I ate my dinner. Laughed when Ethan laughed. Answered questions from a woman named Sandra who asked about the clinic. I told her about the new partnership with the county hospital. She said her granddaughter wanted to be a pediatrician. I told her about the mentorship program we were starting in the fall. She seemed genuinely interested. For a moment, I forgot why I was holding my clutch so tightly. My left hand held Ethan's under the table. My right hand rested on my clutch. Dessert arrived at 8:40. A lemon tart with raspberry coulis. The servers cleared plates. Refilled wine glasses. The energy in the room shifted the way it does when people sense something formal is about to happen. Patricia pushed her chair back. Stood. Reached for the champagne glass that had been sitting untouched beside her plate all evening. She held it in her right hand. The candlelight hit the crystal and threw tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. She tapped the side with a silver spoon. The room went quiet. Patricia smiled. "Thank you all for being here tonight." Patricia's voice carried the way trained voices carry. From the diaphragm, with control. She had been speaking to rooms like this for 30 years. Country club galas, charity auctions, real estate closings where the stakes were measured in millions. Tomorrow, my son marries, and as his mother, as someone who has loved him since the moment he first opened his eyes, I want to be honest with everyone here tonight. She paused, sipped the champagne, set it down. "Ethan, you know I have always wanted the best for you." She told a story about Ethan at 8 years old, building a sandcastle on the Outer Banks, spending 3 hours on the turrets. A wave knocked it down and he rebuilt it without crying. The room laughed warmly. Even I smiled. It was a real memory, a real moment. For 30 seconds, I saw the mother Ethan remembered, the one who cheered at his soccer games and drove him to marine biology camp and framed his first college acceptance letter. Then the 30 seconds ended. Patricia's voice shifted. Not louder. Lower. The register that says, "I am about to tell you something important. But as his mother, I also have to be truthful." She looked directly at me. "My son could have married a doctor, a lawyer, someone from a real family." The room stiffened. I felt Ethan's hand tighten around mine. Patricia did not break eye contact. Instead, she lifted the champagne glass toward me the way someone lifts a piece of evidence in a courtroom. He chose her. The pearl brooch on her blazer caught the candlelight. It gleamed, the way badges gleam on uniforms, the way medals gleam on generals who have never lost a war. Until tonight, 65 people stared at me. I felt every pair of eyes, the women at the center tables. Sandra, who had asked about my clinic. Richard, Ethan's uncle, his fork still suspended halfway to his mouth. The servers standing against the wall, hands clasped, faces frozen in the careful neutrality of people who are paid to be invisible. Patricia was not finished. A girl with no family name, no legacy, no connections worth speaking of. A girl who grew up in, well, she paused. Let the implication land. Let us just say she did not grow up the way we did. She turned back to the room, voice lifting, performative sadness now, the kind that comes with a script. "I just want everyone to know that I tried. I tried to give my son the life he deserved, the partnership, the foundation, a family that could match his." Vivian nodded from her table. Sloane looked at her plate. Patricia raised her glass. "To honesty, and to hoping my son will, one day, understand." The room was silent. The silence of people who have just watched something ugly happen in a place where ugly things are not supposed to happen. Ethan's hand was wrapped around mine so tight I could feel his pulse in his fingertips. I squeezed back. In the corner, June Reeves set her napkin down. Her eyes were bright, not with tears, with something harder. Something that had watched a 7-year-old girl get moved between houses and survive every single one. I sat still. Let the silence stretch. Let every person in that room sit with what they had just heard. Then I placed my napkin on the table, pushed my chair back, and stood up. "Patricia." My voice was even. That was honest. The room held its breath. "And since we are being honest tonight, I think everyone here deserves the full story." I opened my clutch, took out my phone. The screen was already on the AirPlay menu. I had connected it before we sat down. One tap. Patricia's face changed. The confident hostess dissolved. Underneath was something sharper. Something caught. "What are you doing?" I am being honest. Just like you asked. The 60-inch screen behind her flickered. Blue light filled the wall. The AirPlay logo appeared, then vanished. My phone screen mirrored onto the TV. Patricia turned, saw the screen, turned back to me. Morgan, sit down. Her voice dropped to a whisper only our table could hear. Whatever this is, do not do this here. You chose here, Patricia. You chose this room, these people, this moment. I held the phone steady. I am just adding context. Ethan did not move. He sat with his hands flat on the table, looking at his mother with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger, recognition. The look of a man seeing someone clearly for the first time. Carolyn at the next table sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded. Her chin was up. Garrett half stood from his chair, then sat back down. He did not know what was on the screen yet, but he knew it was coming from the same device that held the group chat, and his face told me he understood. I looked at Patricia. She was gripping the champagne glass so hard her knuckles were white. I pressed play. 2 seconds of buffering, the longest 2 seconds of my life. The screen loaded. A living room appeared. The Aldridge living room. Evening light. Crystal tumbler on the coffee table. And Patricia, sitting on her cream-colored sofa, holding an imaginary champagne glass. Her recorded voice filled the dining room through the restaurant's speakers. Let me practice one more time, Viv. I want to get the wording just right. Every head in the room turned to the screen. 65 people watching Patricia Aldridge in her own living room, rehearsing her humiliation of me like a one-woman show. The real Patricia stood frozen beneath the TV, her back to the screen, her face to the room. She did not turn around. She did not need to. She recognized her own voice. On screen, Patricia lifted the imaginary glass. My son could have married a doctor, a lawyer, someone from a real family. Instead, he chose her. She pointed at the camera and laughed. Vivian's voice came through the speakers. And then what? Then I pointed at her, in front of everyone. Can you imagine the look on her face? Patricia on screen was beaming. She was proud. She was performing for an audience of 1, and now an audience of 65 was watching. Vivian. She will cry. Right there at the table. Patricia laughed again. The sound filled the room. Rich. Confident. A woman who believed she would never be caught. She will run. She is a foster kid, Viv. They always run when it gets hard. A gasp from somewhere in the middle of the room. Sandra pressed her hand to her mouth. Richard set his fork down with a clink that sounded like a gavel. Patricia's champagne glass trembled in her hand. 65 guests, 1 TV screen, and Patricia Aldridge's own voice filling every corner of that dining room. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It tells me you want more stories like this. Now, let me tell you what happened when the video kept playing. The video was not finished. On screen, Patricia leaned back, picked up the crystal tumbler, took a sip. The ice clinked. By Monday, Sloane's engagement photos are on the mantle, and the Holt deal closes by March. Vivian. 4.2 million. Not bad for a rehearsal dinner speech. Patricia smiled. We do not let street kids sit at the Aldridge table, Vivian. It is time everyone knew that. Street kids. There it was again. The same phrase the caterer had quoted. The same phrase from the group chat. Patricia's signature. Her shorthand for everything she thought I was. Playing now through restaurant speakers for 65 people who had sipped her champagne and eaten her food and believed her smile for years. The video ended. The screen went black. Then the AirPlay logo returned. Blue and serene, casting a glow across the back of Patricia's head like a halo made of evidence. The room was silent. I mean truly silent. Not the polite silence that follows a toast. The silence that follows a detonation. The kind where people are still processing what hit them. Vivian sat at her table with both hands gripping the edge of the tablecloth. Her emerald dress looked darker now. Smaller. Her husband, a man I had never spoken to, a man named Lyle who ran distribution for a logistics company, turned to her slowly. Viv. His voice was barely audible. What did she mean, the Holt deal? Vivian did not answer. Sloane was staring at her mother. Her mouth was open. She turned to Patricia, then to Vivian, then to Patricia again. Mom? Sloane's voice cracked. I did not know about the money part. I swear I did not know. Garrett had not moved. He sat with his hands flat on the table, eyes on the tablecloth, the posture of a man who had known the building was going to collapse and had chosen to stay inside anyway. Patricia spun toward the TV. Turn it off. Turn it off. Nobody moved. The reactions came in waves. First, the whispers. Low voices at the far tables. People turning to spouses, to friends, to anyone who could confirm that what they had just seen was real. Then the movement. Sandra stood up from her chair, walked to the bar, and poured herself a glass of water. She did not return to her seat. She stood at the bar with both hands on the counter and shook her head slowly back and forth. Richard, Ethan's uncle, folded his napkin into a precise rectangle, placed it on the table, pushed his chair back. He looked at Garrett. Not Patricia. Garrett. The look of a man who has just discovered his brother chose a side, and it was the wrong one. Two of Patricia's country club friends, women I had seen at the bridal shower, women who had kissed my cheeks without knowing my name, leaned toward each other. One whispered something. The other closed her eyes. A third woman at their table stood quietly, left her napkin on her chair, and walked out of the dining room without a word. The click of her heels on the marble floor was the first sound to break the silence that mattered. Patricia stood beneath the dark TV screen. Her face was the color of the white tablecloth. Tears were streaming now, not the kind that come from remorse, the kind that come from exposure. From the sudden, violent understanding that the room you spent 30 years curating is now watching you through entirely different eyes. She lunged toward the TV. Where is the remote? Garrett, where is the remote? Garrett did not look up. It is not the TV, Pat. Vivian tried to stand, grabbed her purse. Her husband put his hand on her arm.